Be informed, be inspired. Join us for the Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond show. Tune in and listen for both modern and ancient wisdom on all things maternity, parenting and sacred women's business, right here on the Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond show.
You're tuned to Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond, contemporary conversations where stories, science, traditions and new ideas meet. Our show is coming to you from the studios of BayFM in Byron Bay and is broadcasting across Australia on the Community Radio Network. In the late 1880s, a German scientist named Heinrich Hertz used two rods and a spark that jumped between them to prove the existence of radio waves. In the decades after that, a series of inventors, including Edison, Tesla and Marconi, developed the first technologies to communicate wirelessly with radio waves, i.e. radios and later TV. Then in the 1970s, while employed by Motorola, American engineer Martin Cooper invented the first mobile phone. It took a couple of decades for the mobile phone to gain widespread use. Since the 1990s, though, we've seen an explosion in mobile phone ownership, as well as an ever-increasing number of mobile and wireless communication devices. Fitbits, fitness trackers, smart TVs, GPS in our cars, baby monitors, iPads, just to name a few. Of the 7 billion people on this big blue planet of ours, there are 6 billion mobile phone subscriptions. There also have been around 6 million mobile phone towers and base stations erected. That's approximately one base station for every 1,000 subscriptions. These devices bring so much convenience and entertainment to our lives. It's so valuable to be able to research anything, take photos of our kids, stay in touch with our family or pay accounts, all while feeding the baby. But has all this technology been thoroughly tested for its safety? Could we be inadvertently exposing ourselves and our unborn babies and children to levels of radiation that we'll live to regret? My name is Sally Cusack and I'll be sharing some of my personal experiences of exposure to electromagnetic radiation or EMR. Another term is electromagnetic frequencies or EMFs. And I'll be also sharing my experiences of making my way through this minefield of research, much of it conflicting. Radiation is all around us, being emitted by the sun, most of which is emitted in the form of light. And some of this radiation is absorbed and re-emitted by the Earth in very low frequencies. But the frequencies emitted by man-made devices are at frequencies and levels of concentration we have never been exposed to before. My interest in this subject was piqued a couple of years ago when I suddenly noticed a painful tingling in my wrists and hands while using my laptop. I also felt a similar tingling when making calls from my mobile phone. A friend of mine developed a similar tendency right around the same time. Her effects were stronger though, and she even went to the lengths of buying an electromagnetic radiation meter to find the sources of her disturbances. So with my physical effects and everyone I know around me using devices, I started my research journey. I decided to talk to naturopathic doctor Sherrill Sellman, who splits her time between Australia and the US. Sherrill is the author of Hormone Heresy and hosts her own health promotion radio show called What Women Must Know. I discovered Sherrill's work a few years ago when I heard her interviewed on broadcast radio during one of her visits to Australia when she was speaking about hormone replacement therapy and hormonal dysfunction during perimenopause. I was interested to hear her take on the risks of EMF exposure How real is it? Is there anything we can be doing to protect ourselves?
EMRs are specific frequencies on the spectrum of frequencies that we're exposed to, some of which is quite natural, the earth frequencies that we've had, electromagnetic frequencies that exist within our history, but electromagnetic radiation that we're talking about includes a spectrum of frequencies that have been man-made. They don't exist in nature. So these are the frequencies that started out with radar. When radar was first developed, they were using certain electromagnetic radiation frequencies to facilitate the benefits of radar. And then we've gone into these devices now. And now the cell phone and the craze of all the Wi-Fi devices has created an exposure to these electromagnetic radiation fields that have never existed in the history of humanity. Remember, these are man-made frequencies. And we have 100 to 200 million times more exposure to these frequencies than we've ever had, that humanity has ever had. So we're part of a vast experiment that has gotten us totally hooked on this connected world that we're in. We've covered the entire planet. We have cell phone towers on the Himalayas. I was recently in the Amazon. There's cell phone towers in the Amazon. Everywhere in the world is now covered with the ability to be connected with Wi-Fi. And we have these devices that have permeated not just our culture, from cell phones to cordless phones to Bluetooth in the cars, but we are now exposing children to the world of electromagnetic radiation at an earlier age, actually in the womb, where our generation, it's been around for 30 years, but our children are born with it and will be exposed to it at ever-increasing rate. So the thing that's important about this electromagnetic radiation is that it has never been tested for safety. In fact, from the very beginning, very beginning, which is all the way back to World War II when radar was first used, it was known to cause cancer. And throughout this period of time, that evidence is growing stronger and stronger and stronger, but it has been covered up. So we do not get the truth out about it. There are emerging studies all over the world, now that we're 30 years or so into the use and ever-increasing amounts. In fact, we're 24/7 exposed with all the cell phone towers everywhere now, that the research is now starting to come out with adequate evidence of the extreme harm and danger from being exposed to these man-made frequencies that permeate every aspect of our world.
So there is mounting concern around the world about exposure to EMFs, not just from Sherrill Sellman. Researchers such as Professor Emeritus Martin Paul, Dr. Erica Mallory Blythe, and Dr. Deborah Davis are just a few of the well-known names. A resident of our region has created a website with free information on the topic at emraware.com. And if you go to PubMed, you'll find hundreds of studies, there's probably even thousands, and articles on the impacts of EMFs on rats, mice, and human adults and children. But you'll also find critics of these studies. Google any of the researchers I just mentioned and you'll find skeptics' articles on how these claims are alarmist. I find it, as an ordinary consumer with no prior knowledge of electricity and radiation and how it works, incredibly hard to make my way through. The wireless device market is massive and growing every year. Last year, ABC TV presented a program on the suspected dangers of Wi-Fi, and it then faced a massive public criticism of the program, and the ABC later took it off the air and has published its own criticism of that particular episode. It is indeed very confusing to navigate this issue. You can go to the ABC website and look at a post that the ABC published about this particular ABC episode of Catalyst called Wi-Fi. It's quite interesting just even reading through the comments. At this point, I want also to raise that there are two main areas of EMF exposure that I seem to have identified, and so we'll be focusing on in this episode. There is the frequency used by Wi-Fi devices, which is at the low end of microwave frequencies, and there's the lower frequencies again, and they are used by electrical appliances. And it's this frequency that I believe my wrists have been affected by. But I'm also curious to find out more about Wi-Fi. It really is so pervasive now, and the main way that people access the internet even in their own homes. Sherrill Sellman on the subject of Wi-Fi damage.
Microwave radiation that looks at radar, it looks at our cell phones. This is in a similar range of frequencies. Think of it as dial on the radio. And as you dial into different frequencies, you can get different stations. So some of these frequencies man has evolved with quite naturally, and others have a range of frequencies that have been introduced over time by man-made frequencies, and this is the microwave radiation realm. So this is the realm that includes all the devices we're talking about, from your microwave oven to your cell phone towers, modem, Bluetooth. We talked about the cordless phones, which are like little cell phone towers in your home, giving and receiving these frequencies. So these are in the range of what we call microwave radiation frequencies. And these are the ones that have been introduced within the last 30 years into the world, into our culture. And these are the ones that we are really being concerned with in our conversation today, because they have had huge impact on our physiological health. They have a huge impact on the function of our cells. You know, there used to be, Sally, a time not that long ago when we could escape exposure. Not everyone had a phone. Not every child had a phone. There were places that didn't have cell phone coverage. So there were times and there were places where people could remove themselves from exposure and have time to recover, because it is a stressor on our physiology. That time is over. There is nowhere you can go. There is no place that now, for the vast majority of people on the planet, you can escape to that doesn't have this exposure. Why is this a problem? And I want to say it's not just my opinion, because I've interviewed the leading researchers in the world about this issue, and they are all terribly concerned about what's happening. It is defined as a toxin. The World Health Organization has listed electromagnetic radiation as a possible carcinogen. It is a pervasive 24/7 exposure to a toxic frequency that is altering the body's ability to function optimally. So if the World Health Organization lists EMRs as possible carcinogens, you don't get to that list unless there's strong evidence.
So I checked the World Health Organization and their lists of carcinogens, and yes, EMF is listed there as a class 2B possible carcinogen for humans. In this category, it includes many other things, including lead and the pesticide DDT, and we all keep our distance from those things now. The thing to bear in mind with mobile phones is that they subject you to not only Wi-Fi radiation, but also the radiation from the battery itself. As phones and laptops get smaller and slimmer, the insulation on the battery casing is also getting smaller. So exposure when holding them in use is increasing. This is what I believe I'm feeling, exposure from the battery, when I feel this sensitivity in my hands around my laptop and also my phone. Sherrill is also concerned about the smart meters on our houses. and also the introduction of 5G mobile networks that are coming soon and are going to be much stronger. I asked Sherrill about